Hello, Marc.
Hello, good
So
afternoon.
wonderful. Good afternoon. So wonderful to welcome you to Coffee and Soul, and welcome to SoulBrews with Sheba. I'm so delighted to have you as a participant in this show.
It's always a pleasure talking to you as a good friends back in our Auroville times where we share a cup of
Absolutely.
coffee at the cafe. It brings me these fresh memories. So I'm very
Absolutely.
glad that we can do that still not in a presential way, but in a virtual way. We still can connect.
I know
Right.
it's wonderful. I'm so happy to connect with you again. And I can see you're sipping your coffee. So let
Yes,
me
I do.
pour mine. And this is
Wow.
this is Booma Devi.
Oh my
This
goodness.
is Marc's coffee.
Amazing. In a
Yeah,
French press.
yeah, that's right. I don't know if it's the right thing to do. You
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
educate me.
That's very good method to brew coffees at home without complicating
Right,
much the
right.
story. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
great to see you drinking Buma Devi in Gurgaon. Makes me feel very happy.
Yes, it's the kind of coffees that you do and your brewing skills, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. So, if
Sure.
I ask you to just hold your cup of coffee in your hands, and if you can just sit back with your coffee and just relax and see what comes to your mind. What does coffee do for you, Mark the coffee man?
Wow, that's a beautiful way to align yourself to the question. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is gratitude.
Sure.
It's quite a striking the amount of gratitude I have for what India and Auroville has offered me as a coffee lover to be able to dive in deeply into the jungles of South India and all the way to Auroville and try to bring in that spark of what coffee means to me and to the rest of India and anyone who loves coffee. So without Auroville, without India, this could not happen because I'm coming from Barcelona, I'm coming from Spain, and there unfortunately we don't grow coffee. So I was deprived for all these years to be able to touch the plant and smell the soil and walk in the forest. So that longing is being fulfilled.
That's
And
amazing.
so that's why gratitude comes at the forefront when you ask me this question.
That is amazing. Mark, in what you've said, there are just so many stories in that I don't know which thread to pull. So take me through your journey and how did you arrive at coffee? First at coffee, then at Auroville. What brought you here? How do both these things combine for you?
Yeah, I think there is a kind of sequence that things builds one to each other, and I think this is what happens. I think naturally when you are at age where was 21 years old, so you become adult, and some questions strike your mind, like what is going to be the aim of my life, what I'm going to be useful for, what I'm going to be looking at. So all these questions somehow are in that age, and so in that search, I stumble upon coffee, and I think it was something that really changed my life completely, my direction, my aim, my interest. So that happened when I was young. I was, as I said, around was 22, 23 years old. Um, First, I came to India when I was very young. I was, I think, 16, and that struck a chord in myself very strongly at the individual level.
So
Uh,
what made you come to India then, Mark?
this was just a trip that
Right.
my parents came. My parents had this good habit to travel,
Yeah.
which I think is a great habit. So along of this travel, said, "Why you don't come along with us? We go to India." And at that stage, I didn't have a single interest about what India was at all. So it was more or less against my intuition. It was actually counterintuitive to say yes.
Mm.
But that turned to be a turning point in my life. From that moment onwards, after that trip, everything also changed inside myself. And I said, wow, there is something else, another world out there, which I was not aware at all. And that brought me to search really deeply
mm,
about India,
mhm,
and in the following years I would continue visiting this country. This time by myself.
mm,
And one of these journeys, these trips, I stumbled upon Auroville and Pondicherry.
yeah,
Again, not being very much planned, just going to the south, and ended up here where I am now after 22 years, I believe. And again, those things in life that are not expected at all. But again, that was when I read The Dream of Auroville was kind of wow. That really touched me deeply.
mm,
The
mm,
concept of a place that could exist on that dream.
mm,
But I knew I was too young, so I went back to Spain. But I dive in Auroville 6 months when I was
mm,
21, so I could understand better what it was, not
mm,
just 2 days and 6 months, deeply diving into Auroville life. I did agarbatis, I play with kids in kindergartens. I did all sort of things just to understand what it was, and a lot of reading and time by myself. That gave me the first foundation, kind of my inner self. And then what I needed was to have a subject where I could actually use it for my yoga. And then I think coffee came after that. So that's why I'm saying it's being a sequence of events. First, discover myself within myself, and then what I would do in the material world
mm,
to work on this. And coffee came,
mm,
and I remember still very clearly that moment. I was two young Italian brothers started a business in Barcelona,
mm,
importing coffee machines.
mm,
And so I was looking for ideas and said, I'll talk to these people. They are actually experts in coffee.
mm.
So that session, that half an hour session on brewing espresso, the way they express it was like poetry. Literally, they're just like poets making coffee.
Mm, mm,
And that struck so strongly.
mm.
And from that onwards, I started my career in coffee.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's so interesting to see how it gets woven in together, Auroville and coffee. And today, Marc's coffees are known everywhere, isn't it? I know that you're also brewing now in fig, in
Yes, yes,
Museo Camera. And
correct. Getting Oregon, absolutely.
yes,
Yes, with the
yes,
Manish, he's the one who is running that place. Yes,
yes,
I'm
yes.
very happy that finally our coffee is here in Gurgaon.
It's fantastic. I'm delighted because now I'm in Gurgaon and at least I can access Marc's coffees much. It's very close to where I live, so I can just pick that up, and I'm really really happy about this. Tell me a little bit. And remember, once sitting in Marc's Cafe in Auroville, you talked to me on the table where you have the map of where the coffee is grown all over. Beautiful table. You talked about your visit to Chikmaglur and your pilgrimage to honor
Yes.
Baba Budan. And tell us a little bit more. Uh,
Well, I think as a coffee lover and being in India to visit the place where Baba Budan planted the 7 seeds was kind of an iconic location that I think everybody should just pay once at least. But funny enough, I still not able to visit the place. I mean, it's quite interesting. That time I went, it was monsoon, and when I arrived, they was shut. It was closed.
mm,
And then I still didn't make the visit. I think it will come at the right time.
yeah,
I've been talking to people from the local villages and said, actually, Marc, if you really want to visit Baba's place, it's not in the cave that you need to go. I said, oh, that's something new. What it is? He said, well, Baba sat there, and yes, he meditated over 7 seeds, but he planted those seeds in another place, which is a nearby village in a deep inside the forest. So maybe that's the place I should one day visit and see what is there.
right.
And but for me, what he did was amazing. It's a beautiful story, and I feel very inspired by
So,
someone like him.
so
Yes.
who was Baba Budan? For a lot of my listeners who may not know. Uh,
Well, there is many stories, but my version of the story is like he was a Sufi.
mm,
He was a philosopher as practicing Sufism.
mm,
So in his pilgrimage to Mecca, he was dancing with Sufis at night, and he observed that they were drinking that dark beverage that kept all these Sufis awake through the night.
Yeah.
So he actually discovered coffee as a drink. And then they said, if you really want to see the coffee culture, you need to go to Al Mokha in Yemen. And there was where, the coffee is being grown and where the coffee is being exported. So he went there, and then they said that he smuggled 7 beans, because at that time Yemenis were holding the monopoly of coffee around the world. There's only harbor in the world that could export coffee, and they would parboil the beans before exporting, so nobody could germinate them. So Baba knew that and said, okay, I want to have seven seeds that are not being parboiled, so they're still alive. So he took 7 of them and quickly went to Chikmaglur and to Baba Budan, and that is where he decided to plant them. So more or less, that is what the story is about.
Yes, that's so amazing, and it's actually such a romantic story. It's there's something so powerful about the whole thing. Tell me about your journey with coffee in Auroville, and also your the show is really about exploring journeys, highs and lows, some defining moments. Would love to hear, and I'm sure my viewers would also love to hear a little more about you, Marc.
When I came in 1997, the culture of coffee in India was very, very almost inexistent. I mean, in South India, do we have a culture of coffee? Yes, for sure, but not the type of culture I wanted to bring in. And so it was like I was very patient, because I said, unless the market and the people don't start understanding that there is much more to offer, it will take me some time. So I took it easy, and I said, okay, let's at least start traveling around South India, visiting coffee plantations, coffee planters. I was more prone to organic farming or biodynamic farming. So I had some good friends doing organic biodynamic coffees in Kodaikanal. So that gave me the exposure and the opportunity to visit and stay and understand how difficult and how beautiful is coffee cultivation at the same time, if you want to do it in a sustainable manner. So that was a great learning process. And then, as the year passed by, the coffee culture started to come. I remember those days with Cafe Coffee Day really helped that to bring the espresso culture, and like the cafe as a third space between your home and your work, a place where you can socialize, and beyond, going for a drink or a smoke, it was a place where everybody could be, beyond even classes. I mean, it's kind of a neutralizing space. And that really brought the culture slowly to India. So in 2008, I said, okay, maybe it's time we start, doing something by our own. And we started roasting the first batches of Marcs coffees in 2008. And then after that, I think 4 years later, Blue Tokai started also roasting Indian coffees, and they did it in a much bigger way than me. So that was very helpful, because it really helped to spread out that there is something else than South Indian or instant coffee. This is specialty coffee here, and it's a very good quality, and now it's accessible for the Indian consumer. So I think then many other roasters came along, and that also helped the culture to grow. And we grew along with them, and we didn't want to have the leading like a spearhead that I wanted Indian companies and Indian people to spearhead that movement, because they are from here. But I was always at the background, just observing and doing my own job, of course, doing my roasting and my marketing and my brewing, which thanks to that also, it became also well known. So that is in a nutshell how we are today here.
I know, it's amazing. And this is for all the people who are listening to this and will be looking at the podcast, hearing the podcast as well, that you haven't tasted coffee unless you've had one brewed by Marc. I mean, it is really, really phenomenal. He's a master brewer, and also spends a lot of time explaining to you what this coffee is about, the temperatures, and makes you that beautiful cup of coffee in different, using different brewing methods. And so really worth it if you go for a trip down to Auroville, or now we have it right here in Fig in Gurgaon. And for the others who are international, make a trip down to just taste his coffees. It's fabulous. Marc, what are some of the reflections that you have had in your life now? I mean, it probably isn't easy from coming from Spain into rural India. Auroville is like a little village that we
Right.
call our home, all of us. But and but still, well, I know your kids have grown up here, they've studied here. I know your wife and you, Matilda, has done a lot of stuff in Auroville as well. So, what's this journey been like?
I think it's been a journey, as I said. No, it's like this is a life, it's a long life endeavor. So you have already a perspective of long term. So when you have that very much in you, then you don't get so much frustrated or you don't get impatient because the context, you are aware of the context where you are, the challenges that that context brings along with it. But also there are a lot of advantages as well that we do have here being in a rural area. So also acknowledging that as well. Running costs or overheads are much easier to handle in Kulapalayam than in Gurgaon, as you can understand.
Yes, totally.
So that gave us a kind of a resilience. I said, okay, we are very small, but we can survive anything. We can be here in spite of whatever can happen. So even now, after the COVID-19, we felt very strongly that we are still very resilient because where we are. And I think that is good. But at the same time, challenges were a lot: electricity availability, power cuts, not accessible to good equipment. For sure, there is no knowledgeable baristas at that time, so you need to start from scratch completely. I mean, 95% of my team are from the local villagers, and coffee culture is not in their culture at all. It's not something that you learn in a university or in a college. It's something that is available only with few people. So it took me longer time, but I said I rather wait. But our growth should be in a parallel with our inner growth as people in my team. I cannot push my team to perform at the higher level if I'm not giving them the time to acquire that knowledge. But it's amazing how adaptable my team are, because they actually managed to go through all this growth in terms of personal and also professional. Now they are in a very, very, very good level, and they feel very secure and very self-confident that what they do it because they know it and they practice it. So it takes longer time, but once you establish that, I think it really ensures that the continuity, that we are not here just for a few years. We want to create an institution beyond Marc. It's a place where we almost worship coffee, and it's like you don't do it as a job. You do it. It's beyond getting paid. Although getting good paid is part of the equation, is not at all what you need to have when you work with Marcs. And I think we have done that, and more people are coming to join our team. We have a lot of requests for interns, very serious interns, because I put them. I said it's 900 hours, 9 months, 6 hours a day. It's a tough job. You need to roast, you need to clean the tables, you need to clean the machines. So those who pass the mark, then definitely they come up with a very insightful experience of what is a specialty coffee all about. And then they can set up their own businesses elsewhere in India, which I wish they will. So that I want Marcs Coffees to become an epicenter, not only of going for a cup of coffee, but if you really generally want to learn more about what is specialty coffee, then we should offer that facility for them.
Absolutely. And so this is very interesting. And this internship is possible. People can even learn to brew with you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if they don't intern, but they want to do a course of brewing, you
Yes.
take that up, right? Is that right? Am I correct in that?
Correct. Yeah. We do different levels of engagement. We have what we call the Foundations of a Specialty Coffee course. It's for 5 days.
Mm.
In 24th of August, we are having another one. So that is presential, and it's maximum for 5 people. And in a week, we start the journey to give a very good foundation what is specialty means. Something that it's difficult to grasp. You can read different books, but we try to bring all the aspects together through theory and through practice. They will practice espresso brewing, latte art. They will experience AeroPress, French press, roasting coffee, cupping coffee, history of coffee, chemistry, physics, health.
Amazing.
We try to cover, very holistically what coffee can be. And then after these 5 days, you've got something solid in you that then you can decide. Most of the interns come after these workshops. They said, oh, wow, now I really want to do an internship. Or I want to start my own business. Or, I really want to do something with you. So these engagements, we have people who did that course. We're still in touch with them.
Wow.
We have a good connection with them, and I follow up them, and they come and visit us again. So I think it also brings up a little bit of beyond professionalism. We share something very intimate, so that make us really connected.
So what does a cup of coffee mean to you, Marc? What does it mean to you? You speak about it almost reverentially. You said in passing that we worship coffee.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you? What is it signifying to you?
I think it signifies, I see when we talk about this type of quality of coffee, I always say there's always 3 parts of it. One is the intelligence that has been put into produce that cup of coffee. The knowledge, the processes, the methodology, the understanding, what we call more the scientific approach of coffee, of course, and how much devoted you are to produce a cup of coffee. So that is what when somebody brings me a cup of coffee, I see, wow, there's a huge amount of intelligence here. Second, I see the emotion. Coffee is an emotional drink and generates emotions. Emotions from the barista point of view, when you are brewing a cup of coffee in an espresso machine, it's very emotional. You are grinding it, you are adjusting it, you see the crema coming in, the smell, the cup, the colors, and the whole thing. And so that emotion is something that it's unique. You cannot transfer it, but that emotion is passed to the customer. And so, what is the customer's emotion? I'm actually able to bring that emotion to you, and I would like to hear what is the emotions that drink is creating into you. And that brings to the third part, which is the conversation, like you and me were having now. Having a great cup of coffee alone, yes, I agree. I like to have my coffee in the morning with no conversation, but I still believe the spirit of coffee is the spirit of bringing people together and talking to each other. And if we can share that emotion, like sometimes I talk to my customers, oh, this coffee really brought me back to my childhood when I first visited a coffee roastery. I mean, and it was like it's amazing how you manage to travel through time in milliseconds just because the smell is triggering something, or one emotion of happiness or whatever it is, positive or negative, whatever it is, that conversation, I think. So these three aspects is what I think, I believe it makes that brew so special that this type of coffee makes it's very difficult to find elsewhere. Something
that is so beautiful, Marc.
Yes.
And it is so true. When you say all this, I completely resonate.
Yes.
With all the 3 aspects that you talk about. You do a lot of roasting from India and of buying coffees from the South Indian
Yes, states.
estates, and somehow there's no middleman, right? You go directly, and is that something that you managed to do, or how does that work?
Well, I think that is the beauty of it, no? Because you don't do direct trade to bypass the middleman. You want to do direct trade because you want to meet the person.
Yes.
You want to walk the land. You want to smell the coffee. You want to see it's a very personal thing. I said it's not about how beautiful your plantation is. It's not about how much sustainable you are. Are we connecting to each other or not? There is a common thread or not beyond all that. And that magic needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and it's fine. It's not meant to happen. But we are clear about this first. So most of our coffees are directly traded through the plantation, through the farmer. We select the lot. We select even the part of the plantation where we want the coffee from.
Wow.
So we can revisit that patch of forest every year, see how it's doing. We have a connection with that, so we go back to that. And also it's very consistently. So some of other coffees, for instance, like the Malabar Monsoon coffees and all, are coffees that are being processed by different people that they grow. So in that sense, the traceability cannot be up to the farmer, but it can be up to the person who is actually mastering that process of monsooning the coffee. And that is done sometimes through traders. But they are not all like this. In Monsoon Malabar, precisely yes. But the rest of the coffees that you can see in our website, the name of the coffee is the name of the plantation or the name of the person who grows it. And that is definitely one of the best things specialty coffee can offer. It's traceability up to the person or to the place. And that's what we do. For international coffees, we're introducing some international coffees. And after a long deliberation, we're doing that because our main objective is to promote Indian specialty or Indian fine coffees. But we wanted to have a small amount of international coffees for our audience, our customers, for them to get exposed to what other coffees around the world taste like. So that it's also, obviously I'm not going directly from the farmer in Tanzania, but I know the farm, I know what it is. And there is a person who is making that amazing job to bring this coffee to India through exports and controls and paperwork and it's very difficult to get in good quality coffee from other countries into India. So for me, they are part of the value chain, and I really appreciate whether they're middleman or not, they are doing their job and they are helping me and you to try an extraordinary coffee from Sumatra. So in that sense, it's also good for us. So more or less, just to answer your question.
I remember how excited you were when you heard that I'd gone to Papua New Guinea.
Oh my God.
Because it's coffee land, isn't it? I mean,
coffee land. Beautiful coffee, very exotic flavors. Again, I mean, we could not be able to trace directly from them, but there is an Indian fellow who brings some of these PNG coffees, and they said, we can get 2 kilos, 3 kilos, and so we appreciate that.
So tell me, Marc, when the chips are down, when things are not going the way, is there something that you live by, something that always lifts you up, like a metaphor for life,
When I'm low, you mean?
When you're low.
Oh, that's interesting. I think somehow there is in the mind, there is always places in your mind that you can access when you have these low periods or low days. Either you're going through a painful process, whatever it is, professionally or personally. There is that space where, it will pass, it's an assurance that, even in nature, when you see a river, everything is moving and it's in transition, and nothing is static, nothing stays here forever. So I try to visualize that, like, okay, it's a tough moment for me. Yes, it is. You recognize it and acknowledge it. How I'm going to manage that, and what it helps me is this thought, that it will pass. It will pass, and just stay quiet and learn from it, but don't get overwhelmed by it, because that assurance that it will pass, whatever matter. And I think that is one of my tricks to overcome difficult situations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's very powerful. Can you speak a little bit about the gifts you received that shaped who you are, Marc?
Gifts, it's when somebody comes to the cafe and just says, just I love your coffee. I mean, it's so delicious. Or when people said, I meditate over your coffee. When I said, what? I said, yeah. I said, I hear people. I said, how you, what are the emotions that my coffee triggers into you? That's what I asked. Someone said, a good customer said, in the morning I just prepare my French press and I have your coffee next to me and I meditate. And every 15 minutes I just take a sip of it. And I love it. And some other people feel that action of brewing coffee in the morning, knowing what you're brewing, of course, not any anonymous coffee, but from where it comes from and the whole story, right? It really makes the whole awakening a bit more conscious. That is one of the gifts that I really appreciate, because then I said, okay, I'm doing the job I wanted to do, and I create that emotion.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And your family also works with you, right? In the cafe oftentimes.
Yeah, I think I never wanted to push my family to follow my passion or my profession. I wanted to be very clear about that. But somehow it's percolating down.
Like coffee.
It's like osmosis. So yeah, I think my wife now is actually fully in charge of the cafe store. I'm actually stepping out from that role after all these years. She's taking up. She's more than ready to do that. And my son has completed his specialty coffee training program in Bangalore. So he's by his age is quite an achievement to have that certification. And he's completely in love with coffee. He said, I love it. It inspires me. I want to continue. I said, great. Now maybe it's time for you to go somewhere else and work in another company, not in our company, because that will be very different. So get experience outside, and when you are ready to come back, please come and join us again. My daughter grinds her coffee every morning by hand.
Wow.
And she has her own AeroPress. And in fact, she's the one who handles all my Instagram handles, all the websites, design and offers and content writing. So every month we have our own meetings on this. So yes, coffee definitely has played a very, very important role in my family. And my sister as well is running a coffee shop, a store with my mom back in Barcelona. So it's something that was not in my family before. It's something that my sister and myself started from scratch, and seems like we are creating something that the next generations may be taking it over. So
that's amazing. Marc, it almost seems to be that instead of blood, coffee flows in your veins. It's almost there in the DNA. It's amazing.
I don't know. It's quite amazing how deeply connected I am with this plant. It's quite striking. Yeah.
If I was to ask you to, people just starting out, or a younger Marc, or some people who are trying to do something different in their life and starting on their journeys, what would you tell them? What's the input you would give them? What's the advice?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think if anybody think in today's reality, what we are facing, if you are a little bit conscious about the state of affairs of our planet, the state of affairs of our economy, in terms of social, ecologically, and economically speaking, I think coffee plays a huge role. As you know, it's the second worldwide commodity traded, just after petrol. So the impact of that coffee has in all these three aspects is humongous. And so if you're a change maker, if you really want to do things to create change, not because you're driven by a trend. I always tell my friends, I want to open a coffee shop. I said, why? There are millions of coffee shops. What you're going to bring new? Why you're going to do something different? Because if you're doing that cafe because that's the hip thing to do, don't do it. Just don't do it. It needs to be really deeper than that. Because if you're really sincere of doing something with coffee, the potentiality and the opportunities that you have are amazing to really bring in those values you believe in. sustainability, socially responsible businesses, traceability, all these things you can bring it along with your brand, whatever you do. It's a very holistic product because it's just one product. When you drink a cup of coffee, it's nothing else than that. It's just that roasted seed. It's not mixed with milk or you buy a jam or you buy something other products. There's so many other products in that product. But when you drink coffee, it's just water and that's it, nothing else. That's very powerful because you can tell the story of that bean. You can really actually travel back and see what happens. It's giving that traceability back to where it is. That I would recommend. Yes, please go. We need a lot of coffee entrepreneurs in this country, in the world, that have that approach. Because if I am able to offer you a cup of coffee that is conscious, that is done well, taking care of all these aspects, and you can actually check by yourself that this is not just an Instagram post, that is real, I think that it's a beautiful way to enter into this world.
That's very powerful. Yeah, and it's so true. It's so true, Marc. And I'm sure as you say this, you'll be inspiring many people to really look at that cup of coffee and some people who are entrepreneurs to see what can I do with it and how do I clarify my own beliefs about this. So I think that is Marc, each one of us has a unique gift to offer humankind. I believe each one is unique and brings something very special. What is your gift?
I think this is the gift I give my coffee, my passion for coffee. And that is something that you cannot even learn in books. It's when you talk, when you smell, that I think being gifted to be a channel between that plant and society. And I'm very grateful to be gifted by that coffee spirit. Yeah.
The coffee spirit, I think that is so, yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Conversations like these, Marc, what is the value of a conversation like this? Like a soul brew between you and me. What do you think is the value?
I think today's in the media, there is a lot of stuff. But to really find good content is difficult. I mean, we want to spend some time, yes, listening at podcasts, of course. It's a beautiful thing to do because you close your eyes and you just listen. And it's very relaxing. And I do I like to listen to podcasts. And I love this medium. I'm so happy when I stumble upon a good podcast. I said, wow, that was half an hour of being extremely useful. Half an hour, I learned things, this person inspired me, or I came to know facts that I didn't know, or it made me that half an hour actually very pleasant. So the value of this type of interaction that we're having right now is about that you got some free time and you want to listen to something meaningful, something that inspires you or brings you to a space that you feel comfortable with. And I think these interviews that you're doing, to me, that fulfills that need.
Sure. So thank you, Marc. I mean, it's been what you say is so true about creating spaces such as these where the content makes a difference. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. Before we close out, is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, I think first of all, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. Really appreciate again talking to you. Always a pleasure. And yes, it's an open invitation to anybody who's listening to this podcast. I can be reached. You can come and visit us in Aurovilian in the cafe, or I'm sure you can put our email address there in the podcast so people can reach us. And yes, it's a way to connect to the wider audience. And thank you.
Certainly. Is there anything else the audience can do for you? Is there a requirement you have?
I think if you are really genuinely interested about coffee and learn about more, I think that could be that podcast that can trigger that interest in you. So I will be already very happy that had happened. And my offering is that, yes, I'm reach out here, I live here. I'm a very reachable person, as you know. I walk around and I love to interact with people. So again, it's an open invitation to anyone who wants to explore the world of specialty coffee. That podcast can be the first entry.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Marc. And I will definitely be putting out your website and your email address on both the video cast as well as the podcast. So it will be available on YouTube. It will also be available on a podcast, SoulBrews with Sheba. And anybody who needs to understand deeper about coffee and experience coffee with Marc, more than welcome to go and give it a shot. I mean, you will not be disappointed. Marc, thank you so much for this
Thank you, Sheba.
wonderful conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you again. You
Me
take
too.
care. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
so much. Bye bye.